Just 5 days after those warnings, Kabul controlled by the Taliban, and the international community left wondering exactly what went wrong and how. NewsNation correspondent Joe Khalil live for us tonight in Fort Lee, that's in Virginia, where some Afghan interpreters landed after being evacuated earlier this summer. So Joe, please bring us up to speed on the day's developments.
Well, the situation on the ground in Kabul is just horrific, Nicole. So the U.S. is focused on bringing Americans and evacuating those Afghans that have helped the United States out of the country and bring them to places like Fort Lee here, one of the first Army bases that took in a trove of these Afghans that now hold special immigrant visa status here. And they plan to bring many more as the situation continues to deteriorate. Striking images from Kabul as U.S. forces and allies scramble to evacuate Americans and Afghans who helped the American war effort. Thousands of American troops trying to limit the chaos at Kabul's airport as Afghans desperate to flee the Taliban scaled walls, some even clinging to American planes. Taliban commanders, now fully in control of the country, speaking from the presidential palace, promising to remain peaceful despite the group's violent, suppressive past.
We will give services to our nation. We will give serenity to the whole nation, that we will go as far as possible for the betterment of their lives.
Kabul's mayor, Mohammed Sultanzoy, says in the absence of the Afghan government and security forces, he's now working with Taliban leaders to keep the city running.
They want us to continue our job and provide our much needed service to the city of 5 million people, although the times are a little more anxious times, but we have to do our job.
Still, uncertainty and fear permeate Afghanistan. Government officials and police have fled. Women now question their future in a Taliban-run nation.
For sure, I'm afraid of myself, my life, and my freedom to work and my freedom to speak up. These are the things that I'm afraid of losing.
Now, President Biden says there have been 2,000 Afghans evacuated to the United States already, just 700 in the past 2 days or so. And the Department of Defense says that pretty soon the U.S. will be able to take 5,000 Afghans per day, but they have to secure the airport in Kabul first to be able to do that. Nicole?
Yeah, must secure that airport. All right, Joe, thank you. Well, tonight we are hearing from people trapped in Afghanistan, plus fresh fears of a terror attack as we approach the 20th anniversary of September 11th. But first, let's turn to NewsNation White House correspondent Allison Harris. So, Allison, of course, the president just wrapped up his first speech on Afghanistan since the government collapsed. He's not backing down, though, from his decision to pull those troops.
He's not, Nicole. 6 weeks ago, President Biden said the Taliban takeover was not inevitable. Today, he flew from Camp David here to the White House to address the nation after the Taliban completed that takeover. The president defending himself, saying he stands squarely behind his decision to withdraw U.S. troops, saying the U.S. was in Afghanistan to prevent another 9/11 terrorist attack, never there to nation build. The president admitting that the situation in Afghanistan unfolded much faster than he and the administration anticipated, but adding that he believes that no amount of military force or involvement in Afghanistan would have made the country stable, whether it were, as he says, 5 years ago or 15 years in the future. President Biden mentioning the deal that he inherited from former President Trump, which would have withdrawn U.S. troops back in May, saying that American troops cannot be fighting in a war that the Afghan forces aren't willing to fight themselves, accusing the Afghan forces of not having the political will to stop the Taliban. The president not taking any questions from the press after his remarks and also not backing down, saying that U.S. troops remaining in Afghanistan is not in the national security interest and it's not what the American people want.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. This did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
And President Biden also in his remarks acknowledging the outrage that people are feeling that Americans and Afghan interpreters especially were not evacuated sooner. Thousands of Afghans who helped U.S. troops remain in Afghanistan at this time. The president saying that evacuations did not happen sooner because, for one reason, he said some of the Afghans did not want to leave their country, that they were hopeful for a better outcome against the Taliban. Even the president's own Democratic allies, some of them who agree with the withdrawal of U.S. troops, are expressing anger and frustration over the evacuation delays, saying that there were months to prepare for these evacuations. The president announced this back in April, saying that there should have been a more carefully planned, a more orderly transition to prevent the violence, the instability, and the chaos that we are now seeing in Kabul. Nichole?
Well, Allison, of course, so the president just wrapping up that speech. What's the reaction that we're hearing from lawmakers and Republican leaders?
Well, GOP leader Kevin McCarthy is calling the images that you saw earlier, those images of Afghans swarming the airport, clinging to planes, hoping to get out of Afghanistan, calling those damning. Mitch McConnell calling this a botched exit, saying that this is a shameful failure. McConnell this afternoon in Kentucky saying he hopes it's not too late for the president to put in enough troops in Afghanistan to at least get Americans and many of the Afghans who helped U.S. troops out of the country. Right now, not right now, but the U.S. is sending 6,000 troops to Kabul, to the airport there, to help with these evacuations.